On today's show, we're going to look back at the 2018 NHL Draft. It's been 6 years and really was the start of this current core.
We're going to take a look at all the players the Sens selected in that draft, and we're going to redraft the top 10 the way we see fit.
There's a couple spicy additions and omissions. That's all coming up in today's Locked On Sens.
I'm Jake Sanderson.
I'm Tim Stützle, and you're listening to the Locked On Senators podcast.
You're Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome! You are locked on to the Ottawa Senators, the only daily podcast covering the Sens. On the outskirts of enemy territory, I'm Ross Levitan, alongside Brandon Piller up in the Blue Mountains. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. You can also follow the show on social media. We're at Sens Central on Twitter. You can find us everywhere you get podcasts. We are free and available on YouTube, where we say hello and let you know that a like, comment, and subscription go a long way to helping the show grow. Today is Friday, August 2nd, and Pilsy, this is the first of a two-part series looking back at the drafts of days gone by. I think it was our old friend Craig Button, Pilsy, that said, you can't look back at a draft until 5 years later. Well, here we are 6 from this draft class that was headed by Brady Tkachuk.
Yeah, and this was one heck of a draft, Ross, especially when compared to the year after the 2019 draft, which we'll get to. And I've got a funny story about Craig Button as well later on in the show too that we'll get to. But certainly this is kind of where this era of Ottawa Senators started. And who better to kick that off than Brady Tkachuk, the captain?
It almost never happened because leading up to that draft, the wheels had fallen off the 2017 wagon of the Ottawa Senators. They had that disastrous run after coming back from Sweden. Yeah. I think it was 4 wins in 22 games. It was absolutely horrific. And fans were clamoring, look, you need to at least get a top prospect in the system to help ease the pain from what we were watching. But Ottawa had to give up either the 2018 or 2019 pick in the Matt Duchene trade because it was top 10 protected. However, if and when they chose to give away the 2019 pick, it left it unprotected. And Ottawa finished dead last in 2018, but got pushed back to 4th overall. So you're like, you can't get any worse, and you still fell back in the lottery. Yeah. So do you just take the player and have that extra year to grow and develop him? Or do you say, look, we're going to punt because we're going to be as bad next year? I think that looking back, and I said at the time, they made the right decision.
Well, and that's where my Craig Button story is, Ross. So I was working as an intern in the Sports Center TSN newsroom at the time of this, and Craig was doing a hit, and I'm watching the hit, trying to clip it for good quotes and stuff, what we can use later on in the show, things like that. And I turned to the guy beside me. I'm like, are we airing this? And the guy's like, what are you talking about? It's live right now. And I was just like, oh man, because Craig was saying the Senators have to defer the pick. He was saying that ahead of the 2018 draft. He was saying they're going to be a worse team next year. They have to defer the pick. And in my mind, I'm like, no, they got to get a player right away because they had finished 30th out of 31. And Craig was saying they're going to be worse next year. And I was like, there's only one spot they can go down. Now, funny enough, they do go down to that spot and they do finish 31st. But like you mentioned, it ends up dropping down to 4th. So it's kind of a clean little transition there. But I just remember watching Craig announce that the Ottawa Senators must defer that pick and pick in 2019. And I was ready to run up on the desk and cancel the whole show because I couldn't believe that that's what Craig Button wanted to do. But luckily, the Ottawa Senators decided against that, and they picked Brady Tkachuk 4th overall in 2018. Thank goodness.
What's more luck, though, that or the fact the Montreal Canadiens went up at 3rd overall and decided to take a swing on a 6'3" raw centerman from Finland in Jesperi Kotkaniemi?
Well, Ross, that's not luck. That's just the Montreal Canadiens doing what they do.
I think that when you look back at this top 10, and we'll redraft it at the end of today's show, like the Philip Zadina angle of it, and I had a Halifax Mooseheads jersey in my apartment in Toronto during this time, and I lived in Halifax before, so I was like, oh, you got to get the Moosehead. Didn't he score 50 goals? Let's go. Brady Tkachuk was the all-around talent. You knew that with his dad and the pedigree. His brother had just gotten drafted 6th overall and was already starting to pop off in the NHL level. And everyone just kept saying, this guy might be better than his brother. He's 6'4". Like he's bigger and stronger than his brother. Maybe not as much, one-on-one or 2-on-1 skill like the London Knights got with Matthew Tkachuk going there.
Fair.
Brady goes the college route to Boston University and only scores 8 goals as a freshman.
Yeah.
So fans are just like 8 versus 50. They don't consider the league or anything like that or opportunity right there. So look, I wasn't one of the people who was commenting. One of the all-time dunkable comment sections is
Old
under
takes
the
exposed.
Senators. The Senators announcing their pick for Brady Tkachuk. And looking back, like it's kind of strange. I mentioned the goals thing, but when you have the pedigree of the Tkachuk family, I'm surprised that so many people were strongly opposed to adding that type of character into the Ottawa Senators organization at a time where they couldn't even spell stability.
Look, I got to be totally honest. When that pick happened, Ross, I was disappointed. Not because I was disappointed in acquiring and drafting Brady Tkachuk. We had looked at him and we liked his style. We liked his play, obviously. But the idea of Philip Zadina was just so tempting, and he was propped up so much, rightfully so. He played amazing the year leading up to the draft, but that was one where I was like, oh man, the Sens are going for grit and physicality again, as opposed to skill and scoring. But look, that's why it's easy to immediately dunk and try to get on a bad draft pick, but you got to give it some patience, something I'm still learning to this day. So that's the NHL draft. Like, we're going to look back at this draft 2024, Ross, in 2030, and we're going to see how things turned out. So that'll be interesting.
I've already got it on my calendar. So that was the big storyline going into the NHL draft. And this is how the top 10 played out. It was Rasmus Dahlin to the Buffalo Sabres, big left shot defenseman out of Frölunda, Sweden. And looking at it now, you still see why he was the first overall pick. He brings so much to the table and is still just getting better and better. He's one of those guys like Brady where he hasn't played a playoff game yet. And you're like, man, he's just one of those defensemen that's going to shut things down and really be an impactful player when he gets to that opportunity. Second overall was Andrei Svechnikov out of the Barrie Colts of the OHL. He's with the Carolina Hurricanes. Mentioned Jesperi Kotkaniemi at 3. Brady Tkachuk goes 4, and then it wasn't even Zadina next. Barrett Hayton goes off the board to the Arizona Coyotes, and then Zadina, Quinn Hughes at number 7, then Adam Bokvist at 8, Vitaly Kravtsov at 9, and Evan Bouchard at 10 to the Edmonton Oilers. Looking back at that top 10, it's fairly strong compared to the years around it. When you look at the depth, I'd say 4 have really strongly hit, and you could even say 5. I would argue 5 too, with Bouchard becoming a top talent in the West.
Yeah, and that's fair. And Ross, I feel like, is this around the time where Yzerman got started with the Red Wings, or he was there a little earlier? I feel like this was his first pick, was it not?
No, I think it was a Ken Holland pick.
Oh, okay. But I just remember it seemed like Detroit was like, well, we weren't really thinking of taking Zadina, but he's here. We got to take him. It didn't seem like that was their guy. And if you look at the way they've drafted since then, he doesn't really fit that mold at all.
It was after. It was the year after. Moritz Seider was his first pick, which got an audible gasp from the crowd at the time. Turned out to be a nice pick. We'll get to next Friday when we look at the 2019 draft. But, man, it's going to be interesting when we get to the redraft because I'm curious how high you have Brady Tkachuk. But overall, I just think that, you have 2 captains in the top 10 with Brady Tkachuk and with Quinn Hughes. So, and you could argue that Rasmus Dahlin will be the next captain of the Buffalo Sabres. So that in itself is pretty rare. Look, this isn't the draft of 2015 or 2003 or 2020, what could be in 2020 with the depth of that draft. But there were also a couple good players that just fell out of the top 10. I'm looking at Noah Dobson in particular. He was a guy I remember even looking for at number 4 going into that draft year, a big rangy defenseman. And wow, to say he's found his home and his role on Long Island would be an understatement.
Yeah, definitely. That's the New York Islanders, I feel like, haven't had the best luck drafting, but they certainly figured it out on that one.
That was just a phenomenal pick. Joel Farabee at 14 in that draft. Look, out of the top 31 picks, the first rounders in this, only 3 never played in the NHL, which I feel like is almost like a bit high. Like you look and in 2019, I think it was just 1 player that had never. In 2020, it was 1 player. And it feels like that's a bit of a high number. Even 2 of them never got signed. Philip Johansson in Minnesota and Jay O'Brien with the Philadelphia Flyers. Whereas it's the top end guys that were able to jump into the league and stick right away. The top 5 in games played are the 4th overall pick. Brady Tkachuk is in first with 440 games. Then it's Dahlin, Svechnikov, Kotkaniemi. So the first 4 are the first 4 picks, just in different order. And then 7th overall, Quinn Hughes with 365 games played. So that's a strong draft class. And when you look back, you can see why. There's a lot of top end talent.
Yeah, I mean, Quinn Hughes just won the Norris. Like, there certainly is a lot of talent there.
How about the Ottawa Senators? Because they made not only the decision to keep 4th overall, but they also traded back later in the first round to add a 2nd round pick. How did that work out for them? Who was available in the same areas that their selections were made? And then we'll wrap up today's show with a top 10 redraft. That's all coming up next. You're listening to a Friday edition of the Locked On Senators podcast, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, that's what brings home the winning trophy, and it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and so much more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or you get your money back. It's that simple. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not burning cash. With all the parts you need, but at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that W. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Check it out today, guys. eBay Motors.
Today's episode is also brought to you by the GLEBE Central Pub, longtime sponsors of the show. Make sure to head to the GLEBE Central Pub and go to 779 Bank Street for good vibes and great times. Not only that, but you're going there to eat, you're going there to drink, and you can assure yourself to get the smash burger, to get the wings, get any of their great wraps, salads, whatever you're in the mood for, they got at the Glebe Central Pub. They also want to make sure that you're always entertained. That's why every Saturday night there's live music at the pub. You can go check their Instagram, Glebe Central Pub, to find out who's playing like this Saturday. It's going to be all time on August 3rd. The Fake McCoys will be at the Glebe Central Pub, and then the Lewis Boys on August 10th. So go visit them as well. Hope you enjoyed their 5th anniversary party, which was last night. The 5th anniversary. Awesome to see local businesses succeed, and it's because of the great people behind it and the great people in the neighborhood that make it their go-to spot. The vibes are free at the GCP, so go visit them at 779 Bank Street and let them know that Locked On Senators sent you. All right, Philzy, here we are discussing the 2018 draft that turned out to be the one that found Ottawa their captain in Brady Tkachuk. He goes 4th overall. The Senators had 2 first-round picks, though. They had 22nd overall. But nope, that's not where they picked. They decided to trade back 4 spots, and in return, like value-wise, Pilsy, I don't hate the move. They end up adding the 48th overall pick, a mid-second rounder, just to move back 4 spots in a late first situation.
Yeah, I mean, I would have really liked to have Keandre Miller, who was drafted with that 22 overall pick by the New York Rangers, but value-wise, at the time, it was a nice move. And we know after JBD and Johnny Tyconic were drafted, that was always the plan. Like immediately, they're like, these two played together. They're going to be a defense pair for the Ottawa Senators for 10 years to come. It's going to be a beautiful situation. Everything's going to work out.
They were the original Nodak Sens friendship tour.
They were.
And it just never worked out, unfortunately, for Johnny Tyconic, who never played an NHL game, never got an NHL contract, signed a AHL deal with the Toronto Marlies after transferring in school. I think he played all 5 years at school. I think they were able to go back as well with COVID, so he really maximized his time there. And he was an ECHL All-Star. I don't know if anybody out on the Rock in Newfoundland is remembering his time with the Growlers, but he popped off for 43 points in 51 games in the
Did he win the Kelly Cup with them?
No, yeah, I think he did. He had 16 points in 15 playoff games in 22-23 right out of school. And now he's going to Djurgården to play in the Allsvenskan. So he's going overseas. Nice. But look, JBD, he's an NHLer. He's played over 100 games in the league. When you look at how deep this draft class was, like a few guys who went right behind him, and more particularly right in front of them, the 3 picks, ironically, between Keandre Miller, who was picked with the one that they traded down from. But after that, it's Isaac Lundestrom, who hasn't made much of an impact in Anaheim. And then 2 guys who never played a game of the 3 that never played a game in the whole class. So JBD goes to the Ottawa Senators there, and we'll see. But I think that if you do a full redraft, he's probably going in a similar 26 to 40, like that wide of a variety. Because I don't know if there's 26, like, anyways, he would be to me like probably an early second at this point.
Yep, that's fair.
So who are some of the guys who you would have preferred at 26? Like, was there anyone that was right behind where Ottawa picked? Because looking in front doesn't make much sense because you don't have an opportunity. But do you think that looking back with what was on the board, they made the right pick?
I mean, I don't think JBD's story is fully written yet. So I still like that pick there. Rasmus Sandin would have been a good option. He's really thriving over in Washington now that he's kind of got an elevated role than he did in Toronto. That's definitely one guy I'm looking at. Sean Durzi. You look at, I mean, again, another Leafs pick, ironically, down at 52. Sean Durzi would be a great addition to this team. And even a guy like Kevin Ball, who was a part of that big deal. He ends up going to Calgary. What deal did that end up being?
Markstrom.
Yes, the Markstrom deal. Yeah, that's a big left shot shut down defenseman, Ottawa's type of player. So really, I think I'm looking at other defensemen that they could have targeted with that pick.
Yeah, and Matthias Samuelsson as well with Buffalo.
Yep.
Remember, he signed that huge ticket and had like 3 goals, but it's his defensive game, right, that you're paying for. He went 32nd, which was the first pick of the second round at the time, pre-Seattle. Johnny Tyconic and the next 7 picks all played NHL games. So that's tough because you're like, he never signed. And then the 7 next picks all do, including Kirill Marchenko, who is the next pick. Now, we know the Senators at this point just did not draft Russian players.
Yeah.
So that was never going to be in the cards. However, Sean Durzi going 4 picks later at 52, that one hurts. Now, Jonathan Gruden's funny because he was just kind of a throw-in in the Matt Murray trade. And then all of a sudden he got a cup of coffee in the NHL. I think he's played 15 or 16 games, and the next 4 picks all failed to make the NHL. So I think you're looking, the next 6 all failed to make the NHL. And the players that are in that range, the Jasper Weatherby, Martin Pospisil, Joel Hofer, like, sure. But I think looking back, there's not an obvious glaring omission. The one I like here too is Angus Crookshank, was 126 that year. The next 4 picks didn't make the NHL. Igor Sharangovich, who, no spoilers, but I think he's up probably in the top 10. A quiet 30 goals last year for Sharangovich with the Calgary Flames. And then only Michael Kesselring is just behind Kevin Mandolese, who is the Sens 6th round pick. 7th rounder, don't have to spend too much time on. Only 3 7th round picks in that draft played NHL games, including Tyler Tucker, who got a mention on our episode with Brady Tkachuk a couple weeks ago.
True. Yeah, that's funny. That's a deep
New
dive.
rule. Brady can't fight 7th round picks.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. Yeah, so you definitely see there's some spread out talent in this draft, but certainly a top heavy draft where you knew the crop of guys that were going to be successful, and a lot of them, like we mentioned, hit like in the first 18 before you get to Jay O'Brien by the Flyers, which they did not sign and got a compository pick for. All of them played in the NHL, and a decent amount, other than really the two guys, Martin Kaut and Grigory Denisenko.
Well,
all of them.
Ty Smith, we saw the end of his career when Batherson put him outside in that game against New Jersey.
Yeah, true. That was nasty.
That was sick.
But it was a good top heavy draft. So revisiting this, Ross, I am so thankful that the Ottawa Senators went with Brady Tkachuk, because imagine where this team would be, even if they had picked one of the guys that are in that area. It's still, none of these players would have the impact on this team, franchise, and city that Brady Tkachuk has, in my opinion.
I think there's two options. There's Brady Tkachuk and there's Quinn Hughes.
Agreed. Yeah.
Quinn and Brady would say the exact same thing about his buddy. Like, that guy, he's unbelievable. And the Locked On Canucks guys will be quick to remind us that we said that Brady and the Sens were going to take the step forward that, well, the Canucks ended up doing under Quinn Hughes' leadership. That gives us a great segue into the top 10. And how does it all look in a redraft? That conversation is next. You're listening to Locked On Senators. It's your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. I love sports. I love them so much, I'm doing a full episode about a draft that happened 6 years ago. That's how much we love sports on this show. And I know you guys love sports too. I don't want them to stop, but it's summertime. NBA, NHL playoffs are over, and the sports, they're just not sports in the way I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I got to do is open up the app, think of some bets that I think are going to hit, and they have it ready for me. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a booster bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So get your baseball bets in, get your hockey future bets in. NFL football is around the corner. Get pumped for that, and do it at FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball.
All right, Pillsy, we've made it to the top 10 redraft. The Ottawa Senators did pick 4th overall in the 2018 draft. Would they have had the option of drafting Brady Tkachuk if the draft was today and we knew everything we know now about these players?
I don't think so, Ross. I don't think so.
I don't think so either. Who is the number 1 pick in our 2018 redraft now 6 years after that fateful night?
So we are not biased here on the Locked On Senators podcast. Never have been, never will. Correct. However, Brady Tkachuk, he's 1-1 for me. I mentioned it. There's a couple guys that would make me think, but the impact that he's had and the type of player he is and what the Ottawa Senators need, he's their guy. He's the top guy, in my opinion. Other fan bases, they might want to clap back, and that's fair. There's an argument to be had here, but I still got Brady as the top guy from the 2018 draft.
I think there's a 3-way argument. How deep is your first tier? How many people made you think?
Well, Quinn Hughes, obviously. I think that's the closest one. That's where the gap is closest. Dahlin, still a really good defenseman. Certainly,
that's my tier.
He's in the conversation. And I think Svechnikov is on the outside looking in. He's not quite there, but amazing player. But when you look at the caliber of Brady Tkachuk, Rasmus Dahlin, and Quinn Hughes, I don't think Svechnikov is quite with those three.
Well, I think that injuries have played a role with that, right? He's had a couple serious ones. He missed 18 games 2 years ago and missed 24 games or 23 games last year. So it's like, Whereas Brady is just so I was gonna say discipline. What's the word that I'm looking for? Where
Discipline is not the word you're looking for.
no, it's definitely not. But just in terms of like being available, the best ability is availability. Durable is the word
Durable.
that
Yep.
I'm looking for. He's durable, and I think that's allowed him. The more ice time you get, the more practice you get, the more time you're able to improve your game. Because Svechnikov is still a heck of a talent. He's also been in a really good situation, getting to play a lot with Sebastian Aho and the Carolina Hurricanes that play so strong in a system defensively that I think that you kind of you have more of a chance of success than maybe in that run and gun style that Ottawa played for a number of years under DJ. So yeah, he's right there. Like in the redraft, though, I mean, Svechnikov's a top 5 pick, probably number 4 after those guys, unless we want to sneak Noah Dobson in here because he is that good.
I've still got Svechnikov ahead of him, but there could be an argument there as well. Yeah, I would hear that. Like
So
Dobson had a huge year.
And he's so smooth, and he just plays the game like it's on slow down mode, like it's on rookie, and he's just so it's butter out there. So I like watching him play a lot. To me, he would be number 5. So I'll go with Brady 1 as a non-biased Ottawa Senators podcast. Quinn Hughes 2, Rasmus Dahlin 3, Andrei Svechnikov will go 4 on this list, and then Noah Dobson is at number 5. So that's my first half of this top 10.
Yeah, I'm aligned with that.
Okay, so who is it at number 6?
I think we're in agreement on this one as well, Ross, especially after the playoffs he had with the Edmonton Oilers. Evan Bouchard is a worthy candidate of the number 6 spot here. And Ross, I don't think we went as far as thinking targeting him with the Sens for the 4th pick. But I remember we looked at him and he was a guy that we liked. So he's a good player and he's found his stride in Edmonton. And especially now that they moved, the big thing for him was Edmonton moving on from Tyson Barrie. While Barrie was there, Bouchard wasn't able to take that spot and quarterback the top power play. Once they moved on from Barrie, he was able to do that.
Well, what else did they do in that Barrie trade? They got him a steady partner, like what Ottawa's trying to do with their top 4, because ever since Matthias Ekholm was put beside Evan Bouchard, his game has just gone to a completely other level. So I like that there at number 6, Pilsy. Number 7, I think we just went with the player who's had the most ongoing success is Joel Farabee. I mean, if you look at it, he's top 5 in a number of categories in this draft class. And I think that he's still just kind of finding his rhythm as a veteran scorer in the NHL. A couple down years in there, but I think he still deserves to be in this range when we do the redraft.
Yep, that's fair. I maybe would have Sean Durzi ahead of Farabee and the player you have next on this list, just because Durzi was basically the number 1 guy in Arizona last year, and he's going to be a big part of that Utah Hockey Club moving forward, and I really like his game, but Farabee has done really well for himself so far too.
Yeah, he does. Now, a couple of years where he's deep in the minuses, but I think if you put him with Michkov or around talented players going forward in Philly, it's going to be interesting to see with their depth down the middle maybe not being ideal to start the season, if he's going to be able to pop off offensively after only having 50 points in 82 games last year off a 39-point season the year before. But he's already at 334 NHL games, and I think that's at this point in this draft class where we've got that top end tier, I think, that lasts until number 6. I think it opens up a little bit after that, and I just went with the guy who, of the next few picks, was the highest in the draft as well. But Igor Sharangovich moves up 133 spots for me. Like
That's probably best value.
His goal scoring ability to me super underrated, and I was a little shocked actually when I clicked in and saw he had 31 goals in Calgary in his first year there after being traded.
Yeah, he landed in a really good situation for himself. He was never going to be a top 6 guy in New Jersey, so he goes to Calgary. That's a guy that's going to be a middle 6 staple of their rebuild. I think it's fair to say they're rebuilding now. So he's a nice player too, and especially when you look at how late in the draft he was picked.
And then we've got at number 9, Sean Durzi up 43 spots. Pelsey made his argument. He's probably got him up at 7. And then Rasmus Sandin at 19 spots above where he went at 29th overall. So nice to have 2 Leafs draft picks there that played a grand total of 100 games for Sandin for the Leafs before thriving elsewhere. So good
Jersey
draft.
never played a game for them.
Yeah, good draft. He was in the trade for Jake Muzzin.
Yep.
With Sean Dursey, and they gave up another good player in that trade. What's the Trevor Moore was in that trade.
Yeah.
He's a good player too. He really found his role with the LA Kings. So let us know who we missed in this redraft. I think it was a fun exercise from a Sens perspective based on the Brady Tkachuk storyline entering the draft and just how well it's turned out. Look, you can make the argument that Hughes is the best player of this draft. I won't argue with you. He's got a higher career high in points as a defenseman over Brady, but these two are just fun to watch, and it'll be sweet to see them on Team USA, hopefully together sooner rather than later at the Four Nations. But beyond that, I think it's a pretty high top-end class with the top 5 picks, 6 picks really being impact NHLers, and then you had another 10, 15 strong NHL talent pool after that.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. And when you draft a player and develop him into your captain, that's pretty incredible for obviously the Sens, and you got to throw the Canucks in there too. So that's what you're trying to do when you have a top 10 pick.
And that's what not only they did, but I think Buffalo maybe got their captain on their hand there with Rasmus Dahlin. All right, Pilsy, we're heading into another weekend. We're 60 some odd days away from the opening night, and it really does feel like things are falling into place now that the stability's there at the top of the Senators organization, and then you're seeing all of the secondary hirings, the Rob DeMaios, the Matt Nichols, all these added positions, not replacing. It just feels like now there's a bigger front office. I really think that there's going to be a prepared training camp with purpose, confidence, swagger. And I just can't wait, man. I think this is really going to be a special year.
Yep, I'm excited as well. And I'm excited for next week too, Ross. Next week, we got our interview with Hoyt Stanley. That's going to be
Good
on
guy,
Monday.
Eh?
Great guy. You guys are going to really enjoy that interview. We've got a Sens Central citizen, Mark, another awesome interview, another awesome Sens Central citizen. And then on Friday, we're taking it to 2019. We're going to revisit that draft as well, which is very different than the one we just visited.
Has any Sens prospect shown up with their own Sens jerseys? Like, I felt like we were doing a citizen segment with Hoyt.
Yeah, that was sweet. Yeah,
and if you're going to have
the first one,
no spoilers, but if you're going to have 2 Sens jerseys, having one an Erik Karlsson jersey and another a Daniel Alfredsson jersey with personalized signatures on it, that's pretty sweet. So big fans of Hoyt Stanley.
It's too bad Hoyt Stanley didn't win our jersey giveaway. Then he could have added Brady Tkachuk to that mix. That'd be the holy trinity.
Yeah, of Sens captains, exactly.
Yeah.
No disrespect to you, Spaz. We know you had that one year, but yeah, those are 3 guys when you think of Sens captains. All right, Pilsy, we'll get to that next week. Another great one in the books, our first week of summer. We will be on our Monday, Wednesday, Friday schedule for the foreseeable future. Social media might be a little bit slower the next few weeks with me out of town. I'm currently on a boat in Alaska. Feels funny to say as I'm sitting in my basement here in Winnipeg, but it's going to be another 5 weeks of that schedule, and then we'll hit the ground running because the schedule came out for the rookie tournament. So it's starting to smell like hockey around here, and we'll be with you every step of the way. For today, we say goodbye. Have a great weekend, everyone. Thank you for watching, listening, engaging with the show. It truly does mean a lot to us. For Brandon Piller, I'm Ross Levitan. This has been another edition of the Locked On Senators podcast. Your team every day.